are now ready to welcome everybody, both here in the room and those who are participating remotely by way of WebEx. I am John Elting. I'm the chair of the Federal Committee on Statistical Methodology, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome everybody, again, both here in the room and those who are participating by way of WebEx. This is going to be the first of 3 workshops that Washington Statistical Society and the Federal Committee on Statistical Methodology are co-sponsoring. On the transparent reporting regarding the quality of integrated data. To set the stage for this, we're seeing a lot of very strong current interest, both here in the United States and with our international partners, in the prospective integration of multiple data sources. Interest is arising because of the fact that we now have many sources of information, both traditional surveys and administrative and commercial records, that are becoming increasingly available to us. And that's providing us with a wonderful opportunity to accomplish 2 major things. In some cases, they provide an opportunity to improve the profile of quality, risk, and cost that we have for our current statistical information products and services. In addition, these additional sources of information, the prospect for integrating them, also gives us many opportunities to expand our statistical portfolios, and by doing so, expand the way in which we provide information products and services to our key stakeholders. In addition, when we think about those multiple sources of information and ways in which we might integrate them, if you think about it in a little bit of depth, it's clear very quickly that we need a very clear vision among all of our participants, stated at the right level of granularity on the predominant features of quality that are going to be important to accomplish the goals I just mentioned, expanding our products and services and improving the profile of quality, risk, and cost that we have with our current products. And to address those issues, we're going to be having 3 workshops. The first one is today focused on input data quality. Second workshop is going to be on January 25th. It's going to be focusing on processing data quality. I think I saw Joe Schaefer a little while ago. He's going to be leading that second effort. And then Linda Young, who's going to be joining us later, and another team are going to be organizing a 3rd workshop on February 26th with data quality and synthesis of all 3 of our workshops together. So we're very much looking forward to all of those. In going through all 3 of those workshops, we're going to be seeing a very large number of very important details covered in all of the many presentations that we have. As we work through all of those details, it's going to be worthwhile to bear in mind 2 overarching classes of questions. The first one is going to be centering on the concept of fitness for use. And in particular, as we hear all the presentations today, and again on January 25th and on February 26th, it's worthwhile to stop and say, okay, this is all great. Now, what particular features are going to be the most important for our data users to understand? And both when they think about whether or not a particular data source or a particular processing step or a particular final integrated data product should be used by that stakeholder. And then second, conditional upon that decision to use that particular source, process, or output multiple data, integrated data source, how do we go about communicating with our stakeholders regarding the strengths and weaknesses, or so-called fitness for use, of the resulting product? We know none of these products are going to be perfect. They all have strengths and weaknesses. How do we express that in a clear way to our stakeholders? And to expand on that question about how do we communicate that with our stakeholders, it's worthwhile that I ask somewhat separately about what's the best way in which we can communicate those predominant quality features, both to people, technical specialists in a given field. They spend their careers working in a particular sub-area. How do we communicate to our peers in that way? Second, how do we communicate those same concepts, but in appropriate ways, to other stakeholders who may be specialists in a particular area? For example, labor economics, public health, education. How do we communicate that to them in a way that will resonate with them, acknowledging that they are not technical specialists in a particular area of methodology or technology, but nonetheless need to have a very clear vision about the quality features and the impact those quality features are going to have on the utility for them. And then third, how do we communicate those ideas to the general public? For example, journalists, people who are in fact consuming information largely through third-party sources like media reports? And how do we manage to communicate in a way that also gets the nuances across to them in an appropriate level of granularity? Now, all of those questions are not encountered de novo for this work with multiple data sources. It's building on a very rich but still developing body of literature and practice. This includes both previous statistical standards that have been developed by federal system, by some of our partner agencies here, as well as our partner agencies overseas, and also by reasonable customary practice by many of our colleagues in the private sector and academia. Also builds a lot on methodological research. We're going to be seeing later on a lot of discussion of extension of concepts that were developed originally in the area of total survey error models. Similarly, when we go on and think about the work that we'll be considering in the second two workshops, we're going to be seeing a lot of extensions and variations on ideas that were developed originally, for example, in record linkage, small area estimation, imputation, a number of other areas. We're going to ask about how do we build on those ideas and extend those ideas now to this area of multiple data sources. In addition, as many of you are aware, there was a wonderful report issued on October 2nd by the Committee on National Statistics panel on integration of multiple data sources. That provides a very rich base for an awful lot of we have both today and in our subsequent two workshops. And we're very fortunate that Bob Groves, who was the chair of that panel, is going to be giving us an overview of some of the concepts and results that they had from that panel report. So we're very much looking forward to that later today. So in closing, we'd like to thank everybody who has contributed enormous amounts to the development of this workshop. This includes the Washington Statistical Society and the FCSM members, who are the co-sponsors for it. Also, Wendy Martinez, Polly Phipps, and everybody at the BLS Conference Center for handling all the logistics, both here in the conference center and, again, through our WebEx connections. Very much appreciate that. All of our speakers that we have today, and also Chris Chapman and his organizing committee for this workshop. So we'd like to thank all of them. And with that, I'll turn the microphone over to Chris, who is going to give us an overview of our events for today.
Thanks, John. First, I'm going to try to change slideshows, so bear with me here. Okay, great. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, John, for the great introduction. I want to thank everybody in the audience and on the phone today for taking time to participate in the workshop. The speakers are going to give us a lot of really great information for us to consider, but we really are also interested in getting your reactions and your thoughts on the information you hear and see today. So we look forward to some discussions later in the afternoon. My few opening remarks provide information about what motivated this workshop in the first place and how the information shared here will be used by the federal statistical system. As per usual, anything I say can and will be used against me, but not against the U.S. Department of Education or the National Center for Education Statistics. I am not presenting any official positions. Okay. Well, first, a little background on why the speakers are here today and why we're having this workshop. As John noted, this workshop is one of three designed to learn about how to consider and report on data quality issues that are unique to blending data together. This first one really focuses on just those input pieces. One of the many important contributions of the recent CNStat report that John mentioned that Bob will talk a little bit about here this morning provided really helpful summaries of different kinds of data and key characteristics of them to consider. One of the types of data that was discussed there, and for which agencies have already a wealth of information about how to report and how to present, are the survey and census data that the federal system already collects on a regular basis. Because we have such good understanding of that possible input data type, we did not want to spend time here today talking about those types of data. So what we did want to talk about were types of data where there are less well-developed standards for reporting on data quality that exist. And in particular, we're focusing on Administrative record data, those are fairly well understood, but again, universal, well-developed and published standards are still somewhat lacking or nascent. And then we have less structured data, like those that are collected through automated sensor systems. And then finally, we've got some unstructured data that are captured through things such as looking at satellite images and looking at raw text information. Because we have much more limited experience reporting on the quality of these types of data, we structured the workshop around these types of data. So you'll see the morning session really focuses a lot on administrative record data, and then the afternoon session really sort of starts getting more into the less structured and unstructured data. Okay, so the workshop and the related discussions that we have here today will be used in tandem with work being done by FCSM and by some of our colleagues at JPSM to develop a report that we plan on sharing with the Office of Management and Budget this coming spring. The report, we hope, will lay out some standards that we are actually able to identify and agree upon, but also identify areas where we think there's more work that needs to be done before standards can really be developed, and then actually identify some areas where we're going to need some standards, but the state of the art just isn't there yet to figure out what those are going to be. So we need to set some issues aside, potentially. So a little bit more about the workshop itself. We structured the workshop so that the speakers and you, the audience, would hear all the presentations first. And we wanted to hold the discussions then until the end of the day. So you'll see on the agenda that there's not a Q&A section at the end of each one of the presentation periods, but really we've got a discussion period at the end that will last about an hour. So during the day, when you've got ideas or questions that come to mind or thoughts or suggestions, please be writing them down so you have them ready for this afternoon. Very unlikely that given the size of this audience that we're going to be able to get through all of those questions and all those comments before we have to vacate the space. So please share those with the working committee after the presentations today if you've got ideas we don't get to. Which leads to the last point on this slide. We really do have to kind of be out of this space by about 4:25. They start closing down the center at that point. So we need to be cognizant of time and not let this run over too much. So with that, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and introduce our speakers today. First on the agenda is Bob Groves. He's the Executive Vice President and Provost at Georgetown University and the chair of the National Academy's panel on using multiple data sources and state-of-the-art estimation methods in federal statistics. I could say that faster, but then you couldn't write it down. Sorry. Dr. Groves is the Gerard J. Campbell Professor in the Math and Statistics Department, as well as the Sociology Department at Georgetown University. He's a social statistician who studies the impact of social, cognitive, and behavioral influences on the quality of statistical information. His research is focused on the impact of mode of data collection on responses in sample surveys, the social and political influences on social, survey participation, and public concerns about privacy affecting attitudes towards statistical agencies. Our next speaker is Stephen B. Cohen. Stephen is the Vice President of Statistical and Data Sciences at RTI International, where he directs the efforts of an experienced staff of over 100 statisticians and methodologists engaged in programs that include education, international, social, health, and behavioral statistics, data science, and statistical methodology and data analytics. He's authored over 100 journal articles and publications in the area of biostatistics, survey research methodology, and survey design and health services research. In his prior position, Dr. Cohen was the director of the Center for Financing, Access, and Cost Trends at the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. In this capacity, survey administration and development operations for a large number of different data collections, including MEPS, which is pretty well known by most of us, and in support of healthcare policy and behavioral research and analysis for the agency. He also served as an associate professor at Johns Hopkins and at George Washington University, and he's a fellow of ASA and elected member of the International Statistical Institute. Our next speaker will be Mike Burning. He is the Assistant Division Chief for Data Acquisition and Curation in the Census Bureau's Economic Directorate, where he oversees the acquisition and processing of administrative records from federal, state, and third-party sources. Since coming to the Census Bureau in 1999, he's held various positions, most of which focus on administrative record data processing and blending. He will be presenting with a colleague of his, Dave Shepard. Dave is the branch chief of the data quality branch and in the curation area in the Census Bureau's Economic Directorate, where his staff is taking on several new roles, most of which will be focusing on reviewing and preparing many of the record data files the Census Bureau receives from different agencies and for which it collects itself. Since coming to the Census Bureau back in 1988, Dave has been involved with various projects, including research on decennial census coverage improvement and leading the team that calculated apportionment for the 2010 census. The most recent work has been administrative records related, assisting program areas with integrating the use of administrative records in surveys. Next, Bonnie Murphy and Crystal Connie will present. Bonnie is the chief of the branch of industry pricing in the Producer Price Index program at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Her career focus has been development and supervision of the expansion of the PPI to include over 150 service industries. She now oversees the certification of all micro producer price data and price indexes each and every month. She also currently serves on the Bureau that organizes the United Nations Warburg City Group that is developing international best practices for producer price index methodology and development. Connie is the chief of the branch of consumer prices and the Consumer Price Index program, also here at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Prior to that role, she served as Requirements and Validations Section Chief and Special Assistant to the CPI Assistant Commissioner. She now oversees improvements to measuring price change and certification of microprice data for monthly reporting. Next, we have another speaker from RTI, Mary Muth. She is a senior economist and director of the Food, Nutrition, Obesity Policy Research Program there at RTI. In this role, she and others, she has over 20 years of experience analyzing the impact of policies and initiatives affecting food and agriculture. She also has extensive experience applying store-based and household-based scanner data in food policy studies, and has worked closely with the USDA's Economic Research Service. Our next speaker, actually, I don't know if he's here, Dr. Peter Elkin. If he's not here, I hope he arrives soon. Is coming in from Buffalo, where he is the professor and chair of the University of Buffalo's Department of Biomedical Informatics. In this capacity, he was the Center Director of Biomedical Informatics, Vice Chairman of the Department of Internal Medicine, and the Vice President also at Mount Sinai Hospital for Biomedical and Translational Informatics. Dr. Elkin has published over 120 peer-reviewed publications. Next speaker will be David Johnson, who is a senior geographer for the National Agricultural Statistical Services, which is the statistical arm of the USDA, where he has served for over 20 years and has a lot of experience with remote sensor and GIS data. He has a balance of research and applied science skills focused on mapping land cover and tracking vegetation dynamics, utilizing spaceborne remotely sensed imagery with particular expertise targeted to monitoring production of agricultural goods, both in terms of area and yield estimation. He'll be talking to us today about some uses of satellite imagery. Next, we will hear from Subrat Patra, who is the chief of the Innovation Performance Planning Division within the Maryland Department of Transportation's Office of Planning. In this capacity, he leads various state highway initiatives, including the mobility and reliability related performance management efforts of the department, the state's statewide transportation model. He's also in charge of planning for operations. He's actively engaged in the development and implementation of various applications of processes for performance, process and performance-driven decision-making. And then our final speaker, and the only one of which I hope will be speaking remotely, is Dr. Roberto Rigoborn. He is the